Hello, everybody. I welcome back. We're doing a Monster Hunter World tier list because we beat the game a little while ago, and we've been waiting for us to all be on to do it. Because we wanted to do it for a while, and it's exciting. You guys want to introduce yourselves?
Hello. I'm Ethan.
Hello? Oh. I'm Matthew.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. They're my friends. We, did pretty much all of Monster Hunter World together, right?
Everything except for the final couple of fights.
Yeah, we fought all of the final fights except for one, obviously. But, we'll get to that when we get to that. Yeah, so I reordered all of these to be in order of when you find them. So, you know, you might think that it will be a little bit more biased towards, like, later game monsters, but I don't know. At least in my opinion, I feel like that's not going to be the case. Okay, so, let's start with Great Jagras.
I mean,
Personally,
he exists.
I find him to be a good intro fight, but I think that, you know, as you play, of course, the intro fights aren't going to be as challenging. However, of note is the greatest Jagras, which is a fun throwback to this monster. Even though his roof pool is limited, once you get to the very late game, you fight him again. He's really, really big this time. They do a lot of good work with this monster, a lot of fun to, like, almost theme the game around, like, certain parts of it with him, or they, like, have him be, like, on the cover as the very first monster ever in fights and everything. But I think ultimately, I would give him, like, a B tier. Just because he's a good intro monster, but I don't think he holds up.
What do you think, Ethan?
I don't know. I'd put him in C. He's not that exciting.
All right, I have a different opinion. I really like enemies in RPGs that you can go back to and one-shot when you have a full build. And I know that doesn't make for a good fight, and I'm not saying his fight's amazing, but for an intro monster, for like the first guy you fight in Monster Hunter World, I think he's a really good like tutorial monster. So I think I would put him in A tier just because I think he's just, I think he just does a really solid job at like getting people into the game.
I think that's a fair way to think about it, but I think the issue with that is that Monster Hunter is not the type of game where you fight a monster once and then forget about it. The monsters all have you know, you have to repeat the fights multiple times to get the gear if you want it. They take up an important part of the ecology of the, you know, the maps. So
Yeah.
even if you're not necessarily on the hunt for one monster, that monster might show up anyway. And I think that monster being engaging throughout the entire game to a degree is important. I do
That's
think
fair.
that there is a certain amount of enjoyment, because even if you are, you know, in high rank or master rank and you're fighting a high rank and master rank Jagras, he's still easy, right? So I think there's some enjoyment of kind of having like a little bit of a punching bag and easy monster to learn and beat up.
Yeah.
But I do think that there is a sort of they could have done more with it.
Yeah.
If you look at a game like Dark Souls 3, with the intro boss there, that boss I think holds up even into like late game. It's the moveset is interesting and engaging. Not that you would come back and fight it again, but you get my point.
Yeah, that's fair. And even in the late game, if this guy shows up again and you fight him and he's easy and you one-shot him, he all his gear is bad. So it's not much of a point, unfortunately.
I can't begrudge these monsters the devs' poor decision to give them bad gear. Kuliaku,
I can.
I'll drop
on the other
everyone in
hand,
B.
I don't think Kuliaku is a B tier monster. I do not like fighting this monster. It's annoying. He holds up the rock in his hand and it just blocks your attacks and you clink off of it. He's really jumpy for an early game monster. For somebody who's first learning the game, I think this is actually kind of a disservice to them, because it's really hard to keep up with the pace of this monster at the very beginning of the game, and you just kind of get frustrated and annoyed with it because it blocks your attacks with the rock.
I agree. When you don't know how to play, clinking off the rock 50 times is just annoying, and you're just like, I
He's
don't
not
want to fight
interesting.
this guy.
I would put him in D.
And then later in the game, once you know how to fight him, he's just annoying and gets in the way and doesn't do anything. Yeah, I'd put him in D as well. I don't think he's like a horrible fight. He's just kind of lame. He's a loser.
Yeah, he doesn't actively make the game worse by him being in it, but he certainly doesn't. He's not a monster fight I'm ever wanting to re-engage with.
Yeah.
Which is good because you don't have to very often.
Puke. Puke is cool.
Piggy Piggy's like the first real monster in the game. Yeah, I think he's good in B.
I like him. He's this is the first Monster Hunter game that Puke is in. And he's cool. Admittedly, there has been another chameleon monster in the past who a lot of people liked and was not in this game, but you know, whatever.
And they did different aspects of the chameleon with this one. Instead of doing the camouflage, they did the like long tongue.
Yeah.
And kind of like, I don't know. I think that's an interesting way to go about it. I certainly think this is a better early game fight than Jagras or the Kuluyaku. In fact, I would even... I think B is a good space for it. I was going to maybe say A. I think it's a little bit better than Jagras, but not enough to warrant a tier raise.
Yeah, that's fair. I think it's good. I think it's a good teaching boss as well, because he poisons you, right? And not only does he poison you, but his nest is in an area with a bunch of poison cups. And despite being a monster that can poison you, he is not immune to it, so you can poison him back. So it's kind of a fun.
You can also cut off his tail, which matters and is interesting.
Yeah, that's true. It does change his moveset, which makes the fight a little more interesting as well. I mean, I put him above Jagras, but I don't think he's that great either. He's
Are these tiers going to be ordered?
I'll order them as I go. I might figure it out later, but...
Okay.
Baroth. Alright, I'll let the Baroth haters get their words out of the way before I gas them up.
I don't know. I don't think he's a terrible fight, but I certainly don't think he's as interesting to fight early game as Puke. At this point in the game, a lot of your weapons are going to clink off of his harder parts, which does teach you about, weak spots, focusing on certain parts of the monster being important, and not every monster's weaknesses are head. I think one aspect of the Baroth that I really enjoy is how much detail there is with how he interacts with the environment. You see the dung beetles taking the mud away from him. You see how he moves around the environment. He goes to the muddy place to take mud baths. I don't know. It's very interesting how they worked him into the world and actually made him feel like a creature in the world. How that doesn't stop his fight from having a couple of hiccups, though. I do think he has too many tough parts to the point where it's a little annoying to fight, especially early. And I think that the mud that he pushes off is a little bit annoying to deal with. It isn't necessarily super interesting. It kind of just gets in the way of making the fight go quickly.
Yeah. Him and and Janath, I think, do a very good job, of selling, what Monster Hunter World set out to do in the first place, which is oh, this is an environment in which monsters live in it, and they interact with the environment. And I think Baroth is a good example of that. And honestly, even though he's kind of an easy fight, I just really like fighting him. Every time I fight a Baroth, I'm just hell yeah. I just whack him and do damage. He's very good at letting you do numbers, and I like numbers. I don't know, Ethan, do you have any Baroth thoughts?
He's good. I think he's... I don't know, he's fun, he's interesting. He's not that exciting to fight.
Yeah.
I'd put him in C tier. I think he's not bad, but he's not that good.
I'm feeling a low B or a high C.
Yeah, I want to keep him in B for Baroth right now, but I'll keep him at the bottom. If a lot of really cool monsters wind up here, I'll move him down later, but...
That's fair.
Okay, this monster... I hate. Do either of you like this monster?
I think it has merits based off of the same reason that Baroth has merits, but I also think it does everything that Baroth does worse. It still has the weirdly hard parts, although this time it doesn't make as much sense because it's like a fish and doesn't have like giant rocks sticking out of it. It's got the annoying mud mechanic that you have to deal with. I think the way it deforms the area is cool, but I don't think that's a value of the monster directly. I think that's more of a map design.
Yeah. Like the
idea.
systems designers did a good job, but the monster, like, being slowed in the water, like, and then him shooting mud balls at you and running away is just like, ugh.
Yeah, frankly, and this fight gets worse in higher ranks, but I think, frankly, this fight inherently is just not very fun given the mechanics of Monster Hunter. I would put him in maybe D tier. I think D tier is a good place for him, but higher than
I'd
Kuliaku.
put him in F tier. He's just the worst fish, and the fish are just bad. The game isn't interesting. He doesn't move enough. He's not
All right.
fun to fight. His gear's bad. He's just a pain.
No, I agree. And the only reason I'm like, I must make this clear. The F tier exists within Monster Hunter World's entire monster list, right? This isn't like, if it's an F tier, it makes the game a bad game. I mean, sometimes maybe it will, but it's like contextual, you know? Like, I think if there is an F tier, it should be in it.
Okay, so I was thinking that F tier was something that would actively detract from the enjoyment of the game by it being in there, rather than it being, or make the game worse by it being in there, rather it just being like a bad or like low quality monster.
I think it does, because when you have to fight it in the story, it's lame, and even like on a first encounter, you don't want to fight it. And then later, if you have to fight it, you don't wanna. And then if you have to get any of its stuff or gear, you don't wanna. It's just, this monster sucks.
Okay, that's fair. You can keep it in F tier. I think that's fine. I'm not too broken up about it being in F tier for you guys.
Squirrel Man.
Tobi Kadachi.
Yeah. Tobi Kadachi. I will remember the name of every monster, I swear.
I think, personally, this is one of my favorite early game fights. It's a fast monster, but not in the way where Kuliaku is, where he jumps in and out a lot. It's more that his moves are quick. I think it's one of the first real challenges of the game, and I think his theming, where he's, you know, like electric flying squirrel, is something you don't really see in Monster Hunter as a series up until this point. It's pretty unique. Personally, I would give this an A tier. I think it's one of the better early game monsters.
Yeah. You?
I think this monster is boring. It's annoying to chase. I never really enjoyed fighting it.
Yeah, I guess I'm more on Matt's side here. I think it's cool. Like, early game, it's neat, because it's like one of the first monsters you see that use like an element. Like, it shoots lightning, and you're like, oh crap, and I want to get that gear so I can use lightning weapons. And, like, it's not that good, but I can admit that I killed this monster. This was like the first monster in the game I wanted to farm so I can use his stuff, because I thought he was cool, and I thought he looked cool.
I think important context here will be relevant is what weapons we each used in our playthroughs, because I think it's a reasonable opinion to have given the weapons that Ethan tended to use in his playthrough versus mine, that I liked the chase and the fight of this monster. I use a bow and an insect glaive. Those weapons have a lot of mobility and are able to catch the faster monsters a lot easier, whereas I believe Ethan used a sword and shield, and
I started with dual blades, then I switched to charge axe, and then I switched to sword and shield for most of the game. But
Yeah.
then I also played hammer a lot, and then I switched to heavy bowgun.
That is true. You used quite a few weapons. I just used the gun lance pretty much the whole time. I offhanded a hunting horn if I needed to, because some fights you just can't do with the gun lance, but
yeah, I think it's reasonable, especially if you use, when you're talking about like using the sword and shield versus like insect glaive. If this monster's in the air a lot, flying, it's a lot more fun to use insect glaive or bow versus sword and shield. You kind of have to wait for them to come down.
yeah. I don't know.
What are we thinking in tier?
If you think
in general?
A, Ethan, you think it's boring, but like what?
I'd put him in C.
C. All right, I'm gonna keep him in B then for now. It's a decent middle ground, and I like this fight. I like it more than Great Jagras.
I think that's an okay place to put it.
Anjanath. I think, bro. When you first fight this monster, I was like, I'm not ready for this. This thing is huge. He decimated me in the forest like 10 times already. Like, how am I supposed to win? You know, and then you fight it and you win, and you feel like a badass. And it's pretty sick.
The conceptual ideal of Monster Hunter is fighting dinosaurs with a sword. This is a T-Rex, which is like the best dinosaur, the one everyone knows and everyone's hyped up for, and they give it fire breath. I mean, it's a little... You might argue it's a little basic, but the amount of like effort they put into selling its environment, how we were talking about that earlier, how they do that with Baroth, I think that this has to be our first A tier.
Yeah, I think so too. Also, his moveset's just fun to learn and fight. Like, this monster's just like, whenever you see it, it's kind of just like, I want to fight it. I don't know, Ethan, do you not like Anjanath?
This monster is beautiful.
Oh, okay, cool.
He is Fire T-Rex.
Yeah, that's fair. No, he's great.
Only unfortunate thing...
Fire T-Rex.
The only unfortunate thing for this tier list is that there will be a bigger, better Fire T-Rex later. But that's good for the players, so...
Yeah, that's fair.
I started the game, and I wasn't really invested in the game at the start. And then Anjanath jumped over a wall, and I was like, ooh.
Yeah, the game kind of starts popping after Anjanath for sure. Rathian's cool, I guess. I don't know. Rathian's been in a lot of Monster Hunter games. Unfortunately, I don't think Rathian or Rathalos have that sort of thing that like Baroth or Anjanath have, to where it feels like they live there. And it feels like they are a part of the environment. They kind of just like fly around and kill stuff, and you're like, oh no.
I don't know about that. They do a lot of cool stuff. They, when they get injured, if Rathian gets injured, it'll fly to its nest and call for its mate.
That's true. Well, there's, okay. I was saying that, and then I remembered the thing in the desert area where Rathian has like that nest with the eggs and stuff. And there is a thing, and she's like is in the forest a lot.
Yeah.
I think an unfortunate side effect of being one of the first and the most classic Monster Hunter monsters that the Rathian suffers from, along with the Rathalos, is that it feels like some of their moves and their moveset feel a little bit outdated and don't really sell it with the animation on what should be happening in the fight. One that comes to mind is their dash attack that they use a lot, generally back to back. If you look at something like the Diablos, that thing dashes at you. It looks like it would hurt a lot more than this thing. It kind of just runs by you. You clutch claw to it, you still get knocked over. That being said, it's a classic monster, and they put a lot of work into trying to port it into this, modern age. I think it holds up to a decent degree. I think B is a good place for it. I'd put it next to Tobi Gadachi, just below it.
Yeah, basic Rathian I like, but like it's not that interesting. Like, I feel like, just, if 1-to-1, Rathalos is just more interesting to fight, but I don't know.
I disagree. I think Rathalos is way less interesting to fight.
Well, we'll talk about that when we get to him, I guess.
Wait, what tier did you think, Ethan?
Easily A.
For normal Rathian?
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
Rathian's probably the monster. Before Iceborne, Rathian was easily the monster I fought by far the most.
I think Rathian would look good at top of B tier for now. We can move them up maybe if we see too many in B tier.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Does that seem fair?
Yeah. We can move things around later. Tizzy.
Mr. Nikon himself.
Yeah, This monster's weird. He kind of just runs up, stuns other monsters you're fighting to like kind of help you, and then runs away. And then when you actually fight him, he just like kind of sucks and dies and does nothing.
He does the same thing that he does when you fight other monsters. He uses his flash move once and then runs away.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of...
He's slightly funnier than Kuluyaku, but other than that, they're like the same.
Yeah,
move.
I don't know if I can say a lot about this monster because there's not a lot to say. I think I just put him in D tier.
I think personally, I think there's a world of difference between these two. I think that the Shizuyaku is basically the correct implementation of the idea of Kuluyaku. It's a little raptor monster that generally you don't really spend a lot of time fighting it, but it's got a little bit of a more unique, jumping in and out moveset, but it doesn't do it as much. It isn't as annoying to fight. And sometimes it's even fun to have, help you in your fight when there's another monster, it comes in and it flashes it for you.
Yeah.
I think its idea, the conception of basically having like a stun bomb attached to a monster is really interesting. I'm not saying this is like a really crazy high tier monster, but I do think you're short selling it by putting it in D tier. I think it's at least a C tier monster.
I don't know. He's just like so free. And also like Kuluyaku has the upside of being funny.
I think the flashing is way funnier.
Fighting
than
giant
the block.
monsters. The game's about fighting giant dinosaurs.
Yeah.
He's not giant.
Look,
and he's not fun to fight.
If we wind up not having a lot of C tiers, I'll move him up. But I don't know, man.
Okay, you can leave him in D for now. That's fine.
Because I don't know a lot of monsters in the game that I would rate like much worse than him, and there's still an F tier, so
I know several, but we'll get to that.
Palomu, the default Palomu. I actually really like him. He's really cute.
He's a fluffy little friend.
He flies around. Sometimes he's kind of annoying to fight because he's hard to hit with like short range weapons when he's flying, but I don't know. He doesn't have that much HP, so it's not even that bad even when he flies away from you. He's kind of just cute. He's got a fun moveset. He's got that balloon thing where he flies around. I don't know.
This fight is very fun for Insectglaive, but I don't feel that they're as good as the other monsters in B tier. I think that this monster's kind of... They're fun when you first fight them, but you kind of forget about them over time. I would personally put them in C tier. Maybe high C tier, but I'd put them in C tier.
I'd put him in high B tier. He's funny, he's fun to fight, he's fun to block, he's fun to clutch claw too.
And he has a couple of niche pieces of equipment that are pretty good for a lot of the game.
His equipment's good.
I think the only big caveat to this monster is the fact I don't think they sell the spectacle as well with this monster as they do with the other ones. Just because it's like a fluffy, friendly
He's
guy.
kind of
You
just a
don't
cute
feel
little guy, but
it doesn't feel as quote unquote epic as
I
when you're
do
fighting
like
like
him.
a Raytheon or like a Anjanath. But he is a good fight. I wouldn't be begrudged if you put him in B tier.
Yeah, I think I'm okay with him here for now. Like I said, if C never gets populated, we'll talk, but Great Gyros. This monster... I'm surprised they even have him on the large monsters list, but I guess he counts.
I think this is one of the most forgettable monsters in the game. That being said, I love his color scheme and his design and his armor sets, but
yeah.
The fight is incredibly forgettable. I think the main reason people even think of this fight is just because it's the first time you have to enter the Rotten Vale.
Yeah, also just killing this guy for his glamour armor set, like in Master Rank, is kind of cool because he has a neat set, but yeah, he sucks. He's like bad.
This is quintessential C tier, I think. He's very forgettable.
I guess.
I like him. He's fun. He looks awesome.
He does look awesome, but he's
everything in the
so
Rotten
bad.
Vale is fantastic.
Except for the Rotten Vale.
He's got a bunch of friends. I don't know. I think he's interesting. I think he's fun.
Yeah.
I'd put him right next to Palomu.
We can agree on that. I just think that Paloma should be down a tier.
You know, like I said, close enough. I can move him up later if it looks a little weird, but I'm kind of okay with this. I would put him in D tier if I was just doing this by myself, because I usually just walk up, charge my gun lance, one-shot him, and walk away, and that's the fight. But I do like his set, and his style is very cool. And his gang is also cool, but Great Jagras has a gang too. And
alright, here's the question.
Cool,
do you remember the name of this monster?
Robodon.
There you go, okay.
Hell yeah. I know Uragon is the other one.
Yeah.
You want to talk about forgettable monsters? Every time I think of this monster, it's just, oh, you're talking about Uragon, right? It's like, no, the other one. It's like, what? There's another one? Bro, this guy
I will say this monster is very satisfying if you've got like a heavy blunt weapon like a hammer to hammer all the
breaking the bones off is sick.
It's satisfying.
But
as a hammer player, I was just talking about how the Rotten Veil's epic. This monster's lame.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think
not very fun to fight.
Uses hammer, likes Rotten Veil. This guy's still lame.
Yeah, I would say he's a C tier monster.
Yeah, I would say so too. Definitely worse than Gyros. Normal Legiana? Okay,
I'm gonna let you guys go first on this one, because I have some strong thoughts about Legiana.
Yo, I love normal Legiana. It's so cool.
Yeah, and by that I mean I don't like this monster. He's just off the ground. He floats 1,000 feet off the ground out of range of all of my weapons, and I don't get to play. And then he covers me in ice, and then I'm sad, and he's never fun. And then you hit him, and then he gets low, and then he's like, "Oh, let me fly 1,000,000 miles to the other end of the zone. Then you have to spend 15 minutes getting to me, and then I'll fly back."
Admittedly, the first time you fight him is kind of a pain, because you do have to, like, run around the Coral Highlands for, like, 20 minutes going, like, where the hell is this guy? And then when you find him, he flies off, and you're just like, oh, great. But I really like the Legiana fight.
I would argue that that's more of a fault of the Coral Highlands being hard to navigate quickly, especially when you first get there.
That's fair.
But yeah, for me, this is an S tier fight. I accept that it's not going to end up in S tier, given that this is a shared tier list. But I do want to state my argument here. I think first of all, you look at it; it's a beautiful design. This like kind of bird-like version, wyvern dragon. It feels very Monster Hunter-y to me, while still having a very striking appearance. It's got one of the things that the Toby Kadachi has, where it's got like the element that makes you excited to fight it and kind of get some of its weapons or gear. I think that the fight design itself is very interesting. It's one of the first like very flighty monsters that you fight besides Palomu, where it spends most of its time in the air. Some weapons do not do very well into that. Bow and Insect Glaive do very well into that. So I had a lot of fun with this fight. I think it's the perfect difficulty for the point of the game where you fight it at. It's a little bit of a difficulty spike compared to some of the monsters you've been fighting. It's not really like a filler monster, but it's also not like super duper hard. It's not like a boss monster. It's really, I think, for like the late game of low rank, I think it's perfect as an introduction to that section of the game. I would honestly see this as the end of the tutorial of the game, essentially, for me.
That's fair. I sort of see Anjanath as that. Like, okay, now you can fight a real monster. But Legiana definitely takes a bit more effort. And also, this is a monster that you see, and after you fight it, you're like, okay, hold on, can I make like an ice longsword now? And I mean, like, I don't even play longsword, and but I can't like deny the fact that it's just so like cool looking. Like the weapons it makes are neat. I like the ice aesthetic, and it is like the first ice monster you fight, which is cool. And I believe Legiana is also a Monster Hunter World first monster as well. So It's pretty neat. You don't like the fight though, Ethan. Where would you put it?
D.
You'd put it in D tier.
Wow.
Ooh. Ooh.
I would put it in S tier, unironically. It'd be bottom of S tier, but I really love this fight.
Damn. That's rough for me. I'd put it in A tier. I don't I don't know what to do with this information.
I'd be
Top of B
fine.
tier?
I'd be fine with you ignoring my input on this monster.
I will concede it's probably not a very fun hammer monster to fight.
I think I'm also
really lame with hammer. It's really lame with sword and shield, and it's really lame with dual blades.
I will also concede the fact that it likely for most people would not be an S tier fight. I would concede top of B or low A. I think is probably a more objective.
Yeah, I like
placement.
Anjanath more, but I'm gonna put him in A tier for now.
Okay.
All right, normal Odogaron.
Oh.
You really like this fight, right? Yeah.
I like this fight too.
I don't.
I don't. Oh, really?
But I'll go last.
Sure. I'll go first. So, I think that this monster's design is super unique. It's really viscerally unpleasant and unsettling when you first see it because it looks like it's like made out of meat, right? One of the more like creepy monster designs. Its fight is really fun. The way it jumps in and out. Now, the bleed mechanic I think is maybe the reason why people might not like this fight as much. Because I think the bleed mechanic's not that great. You kind of just have to step away from the fight and hope the monster doesn't aggro on you while you wait for the bleed to go away as you're crouching. But I think in general, the sounds it makes, the way it like moves, it's very much, you can tell that the game devs had like they knew what they were doing with this one. They had gotten some practice in before they made this one because its moveset is very varied. Its moveset is also interesting because it has a lot of delayed attacks, so it takes a little bit more time to learn than the average monster, I think, does. But once you get it, it's actually fairly easy to repeat and do well. This is, I think, an A-tier monster.
This is the coolest monster before Iceborne. Easily. In my opinion. I'd put it at the top of A tier.
All right.
He's so cool
I like that
and
placement as well.
wrinkly.
I hate Odogaron. Fuck this guy. Mostly just because I used the gun lance like the entire playthrough. If a monster moves too much, you can't use the weapon. You spend all your stamina hopping after him just to hit him with one thrust attack, and then he hops away. And then you go hopping after him to hit him with one thrust attack, and he hops away. Admittedly, after Iceborne, once you can shove the jet turbines into them, they're a lot better to fight, because you can just tap the shoot button, and you actually do damage, and it's nice. But, oof. But, you know, I digress. You both like A tier?
Yeah.
I like top of A tier personally.
Alright. I'm a hater, so I'm putting Anjanath before him. Take that.
That's okay.
He's a T-Rex.
Rathalos.
It's hard to argue with that.
I really like Raytheon. Anjanath is pretty good. Sorry, not Anjanath. Raytheon is pretty good. He's just worth than Raytheon. He just is Raytheon, but instead he shoots more fire. And he just flies more.
In my opinion, he's Raytheon, but he does his annoying tail spin attack less, so I like him more. But I think, realistically, these monsters are so similar that they likely shouldn't be too far apart on the tier list. I would put them at least B tier.
Yeah.
You could likely put this one like
I'd
right
put it
before or
here,
after Raytheon. I think
in
that's
my
a fair
opinion.
placement.
I'd like him more. I just think his moveset's more interesting. I understand that you don't feel that way, Ethan. But, like, he has the Fire Blight and the Poison thing going on, which I like.
I mean, so does Raytheon.
I don't...
Raytheon has it as well. It doesn't do it as much, though. But
Raytheon
I will
shoots
say...
fire, but does Raytheon do the fire buildup?
Raytheon poisons more. She uses her
Raytheon
tail
poisons way more,
and
yeah.
claws more. She just uses the attacks more, and then Rathalos uses its fire a lot more.
Yeah,
I will
Raytheon
give this
does
one
do fire a
caveat
lot.
against Rathalos that I have an issue with is the flaws that you have in the Raytheon moveset because it's ported from an older game, the monster design is from an older game. It's
That's in Rathalos
more
as
apparent with Rathalos. I think it's more apparent with Rathalos because Rathalos is bigger. So like the weird janky hitboxes, some of the moves not looking quite right, look worse on Rathalos because he fills up more of your screen and is harder to dodge those jankier hitboxes.
That's true. Also, later on, I have a slightly different opinion than this, but for baseline Rathalos and Raytheon, I think I just like killing Rathalos more. I don't know why. Whenever I see him, I'm just like, time to hit. But you know, we're gonna get to a different Rathian eventually, and I feel differently then, but... Diablos. Just normal Diablos.
Normal Diablos in low rank is a fantastic fight. Normal Diablos, as you go into higher ranks, will spam his dig attack more and more, which makes the fight a lot less interesting. I think that his design is fantastic. He's a really like interesting looking
He does look cool.
monster.
He has decent gear as well, which is
He
a good
looks
reason to fight
more
monsters.
like a creature than like Rathalos and Raytheon look, I think, more like fantasy inspired than like Diablos looks very much like a creature that could exist, right? Which I do enjoy that aspect of the creature. I do think the digging is annoying, and he does it a lot more in later ranks. So I would say probably put this guy. I would say probably below Puke or Tobikadachi even, but that's where I would roughly put him. I do think he's iconic at the very least, like Rathalos and Raytheon.
Ethan?
He's alright. I'd put him in C tier. He doesn't... He's just kind of Rathian and Rathalos, but less fun.
I kind of think so too. Like in normal mode, he's actually kind of fun to fight, and I don't hate him. But in master rank, like he's such a slug, and that's not even to mention his other form. But
yeah, I think I'm okay with C tier, high C tier for this monster.
yeah, I'd put him there. He's a big boy monster, so you know has some respect to his name, but not too much. Kirin.
Kirin is a D tier monster.
Kirin sucks.
This game, I like the idea of him, this like cool lightning horse, and you're mixing up the gameplay. It's just not mixing up the gameplay in a direction that makes it interesting or fun. You play DDR a little bit, and the horse is really hard to lock down, and a lot of movesets break down against this monster, especially with like the bigger weapons.
Yeah, Gunlance isn't even that bad into this guy because you can block most of his damage, and it's sort of hard to get a charged shot off on him, but it's not that bad. It's just this monster is lame. He just shoots projectiles at you, is small, so you miss half your attacks, and just jumps around a bunch.
Not to mention his sets are very disappointing. Like, you think they're gonna be a cool Thunder set, but they just come up with weird, fluffy, like, 80s disco sets. I'm not a huge fan of them.
Yeah, he's like a Elder Dragon lightning god, and you're like, oh, cool, I can't wait to make, like, a sick lightning bow or something, but he's just not, he's not cool. His gear is lame. But, I don't know, how do you feel, Ethan? You like Kirin?
No, he's awful. Everything you said was right.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, no, I put him here. Honestly,
He's
I'd rather fight the
even-
crappy raptors than him.
The game is really good to play together, too. And it is very not fun to play.
Yeah, dude, fighting Kieran in multiplayer sucks, because you all just are on a tiny monster hating each other. And, you know, you can get flinch free, but that's not an excuse for a bad monster design. Okay, so, like, how do we even rate Zora Magdaros?
You
I've
put
got
him
some
in
ideas.
S tier and move on.
Okay, you could do that, and I will concede that we will do that after I give you my spiel, but I do want to give you my spiel first.
Okay.
As far as an interesting fight, I understand that this monster is not very high. I think that you do have to give them, the designers, at least a couple of points, though, for the just pure raw spectacle of the fight. The whole idea of you're fighting, you know, another monster. You end up fighting Nergigante on its back. It's the first time you see it. It's running through this, like, giant cavern, you firing artillery at it. The actual fight is a little bit slow and sluggish. They could have made it a lot better and a lot more interesting. I definitely agree that it's not very entertaining, but I think that I would give it at least F tier, or bottom of D tier, based on spectacle instead of in F tier.
It has some cool cutscenes. Going through the lava tube is kind of cool. Hitting you with the dragon piercer's kind of cool, but like, this fight's so slow, and you don't even fight it. Like, after you do the event with Nergigante, whenever you refight this to like get materials, I mean, Nergigante I think still shows up. But he leaves.
Fight
like,
entirely
instantly.
breaks down when you do the rematches. Certainly, this is a monster that they shouldn't have been even materials associated with it.
Yeah, and for the same reason, I think you were a little harsher on Great Jagras. I will be harsh on Zora Magdaros.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm gonna concede that I knew this was gonna be an F tier. I do want to say my piece first before we put it in there. It's reasonable to put it in F tier.
Yeah, it's alright to do once. Doing it any more than that, it's awful. It's a slog. It's a terrible fight. Dodogama. Okay, originally by default, this tier list had a Dodogama tier above S tier. That doesn't mean I'm gonna put it there, but it's just something to note.
Ethan, you want to take this one?
He should be in the Dodogama tier.
Oh my god.
Can we insert Yuso Precious right here? This is the cutest monster, I think.
He a little frog.
He's like a little frog. He shoots out he's got a very almost chibi-like design with like the big head and the short limbs, the fat torso. I think it's a nice. He makes a lot more of an impact than Gyros, which I think is his equivalent, or I think even than Great Jagras. He's interesting on refights, even if he's not your main prey, and I think he's a better punching bag than the two of those as well. I would put him in probably high B, maybe below Raytheon.
I am a good person, so I've never actually fought Dodogama.
Is that true? His moveset's kind of fun. He shoots out little lava rocks. He eats them and then he shoots them out at you. He's got like a charge move where he swallows the ground as he runs at you. He's got a lot of really cute animations. I think he's a pretty good Pokemon. What the heck, monster?
He's kind of like a Pokemon.
He is kind of like a Pokemon. I would totally run a Dodogama on my team.
You were saying that he's basically like Jagras and Gyros.
Yeah, he's similar to Jagras and Gyros. He's cute. I think his moveset is more interesting because he eats the rocks up and then spits out the lava at you. His moveset's more varied. He's got a more distinctive design for being one of those two.
Yeah.
I think he should be below Raytheon, maybe even. I think he's better than PK.
Ethan, you want me to put him in S tier?
We also said he looks like a Pokemon.
He should be in the Dodogama tier.
I see. Alright, there's a invisible box around Dodogama that is the Dodogama tier, and he's in it by himself.
Yeah.
But I think that's a fair placement. He's relatively interesting to fight, and He is kind of like a punching bag like Jagras, but he has a bit more HP and his moveset does something, which is nice. Pink Raytheon. I think is just Raytheon, but better.
Yes.
I like fighting this monster a lot.
I would agree with that. It's just Raytheon, but they don't spam their flying tail poison attack as much, I believe.
Yeah, they're a bit more aggressive.
They're a bit larger.
They have some pretty good stuff to farm for as well in high rank and master rank. I just like this fight.
Also, in a better area, and they are a better color.
I would put it in A tier.
Yeah, I would too.
But I think that's a good spot for it, like bottom A tier maybe.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I mean, I personally would put it like this, but you know.
That's fair. If you want to put Legiana below, I don't agree with that, but like I said, my Legiana opinions are probably unbased.
Basil juice.
I think this fight is really engaging. I love the way he like runs around the map, is like this menace that drops little bomb pods on you. I know some people find this monster annoying because of the way he does that, but I think he's really intimidating as he like flies overhead.
The first time you see him,
on the ground above you. Yeah,
like you think, holy shit, this is a big boy monster. Like he's flying in, he's doing the dive bomb attack. There's explosions everywhere. Like this guy's crazy.
And I also think of like all of his attacks. A lot of monsters in this game rely on bites, and it's very interesting to have basil juice not rely on the bite attacks as much, given the fact that they like have the tiny little mouth. Instead, they do like wing slams and head slams. It makes the fight a lot more physically, I think, easier to read, which helps with it being a fight that looks very intimidating, but you get to grips with and you learn and master pretty quickly upon like getting to the harder monsters in the late game of the low rank fights.
What about you, Ethan? Do you like Basil Goose at all?
He's cool. He's fun. He's engaging in fights that he's not even in.
Yeah. It's always funny.
He's fun to fight.
If you're like fighting a big monster and he dive bombs on them and knocks them over for you, it's very helpful. I want to put him in A tier. Any objections?
I'd agree with that. I actually think he should be like below Otogaron in A tier.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Cool. Goose. Pickle.
Also a goose.
When I first played high rank in Monster Hunter World, this was my least favorite monster by far. Anytime this guy showed up during a hunt, I was just mad. I actually think I originally quit playing Monster Hunter World after Basil Goose killed me like twice in a hunt.
You mean
not Bagel Juice?
Not Basil Juice. Pickle Rick. What's his name?
What's this guy's name? Isn't it just Pickle Rick?
Yeah, we just call him that. It's Devil Joe. It's Devil Joe.
It's Devil Ho, yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Not Pickle Rick.
Little did I know, I knew not yet the depths of despair of which I could crawl into, and now I don't hate this fight as much. So,
this is another fight that I think is going to come down to weapon choice, because he's got so much range away from. If you don't have something that can hit his head or tail when it's way up there, you're going to have a really bad time trying to fight him, because you have to get all the way to his leg, which is way within his threat range. And it's really hard to approach that.
Also, his leg has big DR.
Yeah, whereas if you're using a bow or a insect glaive, which are my weapon mains, this fight is a lot more fun. I would say probably still like high B tier. It's got the same problems as like Raytheon and Rathalos, where the moveset is good and they did give it some really fun and cool updates. I especially love when he picks up like Jagras in his mouth and tosses him around like a rag doll. Anytime that Devil Ho does that is iconic. It's great. I love it.
Throwing monsters is very funny.
But I do think that this monster does suffer a little bit from a little bit of an outdated design and a little bit of an outdated moveset.
Yeah.
And the issue with his legs being a little bit harder to reach, like the rest of the monster. So I'd put him personally, I'd put him like below Raytheon. But I do think he is a fun and engaging fight. I think the whole picking up monsters thing is very unique and interesting. And I think that, he's a little bit begrudged, especially because he's one of the more difficult fights at first until you get a handle on him.
He's funny.
Also, his weapons are pretty cool too.
I don't know. I don't have very strong feelings.
Okay, well, I don't hate him that much anymore. Also, he doesn't even appear in Master Rank, because he's just replaced. He's fine. I'd probably put him, like... Actually, I'd probably put him where he is.
I think he's at least better than Great Jagras, but...
Sure, whatever. I'm not losing sleep. The lava fish. All the fish suck, but he's better than the other fish. So I would just put him in D tier, but...
In my opinion, this is the worst fish fight. He's conceptually cooler, but this fish is the most guilty of just sitting back and shooting lava balls at you, and then swimming away and shooting lava balls at you. This fight is dreadful. It has a higher armor class, like where you clink off of it a lot more. I would put this in F tier easily.
Yeah, he does do that thing where he swims out into the lava and then just shoots lava balls at you, and then you're just like, haha, funny. Look, I'm okay with putting him in F tier. Are you okay with putting him in F tier, Ethan?
All the fish deserve to be in F tier.
I would argue Beato.
Spoiler alert.
I'd put the other one in D tier, okay?
I'd agree with that.
Anyway,
I'd even put it in high D tier, but...
Oregon, better than Radabon at least, so...
I think this fight is actually pretty fun. I know it's really intimidating, especially when you get to like high rank. This is one of the highest health monsters in the game. You have to hit it for a while, but it gives you those big windows, those big opportunities to hit it for a while. It's a more interesting like rolling mechanic too than Radabon does. I think that the way it rolls, especially in like, I think in Master Rank, it gets like the fire roll, which is really cool. It's got the sleep gas it can do. It's got like the fire gas it can do.
Yeah.
It's very varied. You knock it over, you can mine its back. They put a lot of effort into making this monster have a lot of different unique abilities.
I overlooked immensely in normal and high rank. Like, I didn't care about it at all. I was just like, what? It's just the other rolling guy. But after having to fight him a bit in Master Rank, I actually think it's a fun fight. Like, I would not be upset about him.
I would put him below Devilho, I believe.
I'd put him in C tier. He's boring. He's okay. He's a serviceable monster.
He's not that interesting, I will admit. I'm okay with putting him here. Because that's not that high.
I don't think he's as good as any of those monsters.
I don't like him as much as these other monsters either, to be fair. You know what? Whatever, fuck it. There.
You can put him on top of C tier. I'd accept that.
I'll put him at the bottom of B tier. I like him.
We have a lot of monsters in B tier.
Yeah, but you know what? Maybe the game is just a B tier game.
That's fair. We'll see. Azure Rathalos.
Azure Rathalos. Okay. I don't know. I actually, unlike Pink Rathian, I think this is worse Rathalos.
I'm of the opposite mind. I think this fight is a lot more engaging than normal Rathalos. He moves around a lot more.
He's so annoying.
He doesn't use his janky, like, standing moveset as much as he flies and shoots fire.
True.
I think the cool thing about a dragon is he shoots fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, he shoots fire and he flies. Those are the defining characteristics of a dragon, not walking into you slowly and hitting you. So I would personally put him higher. I can understand that this fight can be annoying for shorter ranged characters, though, especially if you can't get him to come down.
Yeah,
he just flies.
He just flies. Yeah, he just flies. He's annoying. I don't know.
I have fought Pink Raytheon about 6 million times.
Me too.
I fought Azure Rathos, I think, once.
I've fought
I think
him like 20 maybe, but I hated it every time.
I fought him like 30 times, and I thought he was one of the more fun
Just
fights in the game.
flies.
I would have put him like near Legiana even on this tier list, but I can understand that for other playstyles, he would be a lot more annoying. So I'll defer to you guys for this one.
Where would you put him, Ethan?
D.
All right. I'm gonna put him here then.
Right.
He's not in D tier. I feel like he's being robbed a little, but I don't care that much. He's a mean boy.
I'm also not super particular of reskins in general, unless if they do a big change to the monster.
Wow. Reskin. Big change. Worst monster in the game.
You want to talk about a big change?
Oh! This monster is the most F tier monster in the whole game.
It's one of the most F tier monsters, that's for sure. All he
I'm
does
not
is
gonna
stun
argue that.
lock you.
He's in the wall or underground the whole game,
And if
he
he's
just
not,
stuns
he
you.
stuns you. Yeah, like, he's so annoying. He's just unhittable or you're stunned. And
They
yeah,
took
you
away
could take stun resist
all
3,
fun.
but even then, his whole moveset is just if you're near him and he flinches, you take damage. So,
They took away all the fun bits of Diablos and left the parts that everyone hated. I don't know why they designed this monster this way. It was such a letdown.
you know what? He can stay at the bottom. Screw this
Especially
guy.
the higher, like, master rank version of this fight. Oh god.
The mastering Black Diablos is so bad. It's so bad. It's moderately fun in high rank. It's not that fun.
I
I'm
wouldn't even agree
overselling
with
it, but in master rank it's unbearable. All right, Nergigante. All right, boys. I don't know if anyone else agrees with me, but this is gonna be our first S tier monster, Nergigante.
If it's an S tier, it's the bottom S tier, but it is A or S tier, I believe. I would put it personally top of A, but I can accept an S tier from this one. It's a very interesting fight. The design is phenomenal. It's got all the grandeur of like a Rathalos or one of those like, you know, more big dragon monsters without it being bogged down by the older moveset. It's unique looking. It's got a really cool part in the story. I would definitely put it ranked fairly high. I don't think there's a lot to say about this monster that's negative, besides the fact that it might be a little bit too difficult to dodge some of the moves when you first get there.
I mean, I think this monster's good in the same way that like the Gundyr rematch is like good, right? It's just solid Monster Hunter. It doesn't feel like you're getting gimmicked or anything. It feels like you're playing the game. And he's hard, but he's not that hard. Like, he's not unfair. Like, I don't know. I just think he's a really sick fight.
I'm okay with you putting him in S tier.
Yeah,
Ethan?
you have any notes on Nergigante?
You seem to have lost him.
It's okay, I'll put a pause here.
Yeah, I'm in my YouTuber persona right now. It's very, very different from my normal persona.
Whoa, Nergigante! What a guy!
Facepalm.
Why?
He's pretty good. I think a lot of people hate Nergigante. I'm surprised you guys like him so much.
I'm
But-
a Nergigante enjoyer.
He's fun. Fought him with a hammer. Boy, this guy is fun to fight with a hammer.
Yeah, dude.
And a gun. You just shoot him in the face. He's great. I just kind of...
Teostra?
I would probably put him in A tier, but
I was saying top of A as well, but I think
I think he's fine up there.
fine in S too. Tiestra is a fight that grew on me over time, but I'm still not a huge fan of it.
It's kind of the opposite for me. I had to farm this guy a lot, and doing so made me like him less.
I had to farm him a lot, and doing so made me more appreciative of his moveset. But I think ultimately, the fire effects are really cool with this monster. The design is all right. I'm not a huge fan of the design. I know some people are. It feels a lot out of place to me. It feels a little bit more fantasy than a lot of the fights up until this point. But except for Kirin, that's because they're bringing him in from an older title as well. I think some of his moves are probably not reasonable, especially the one where he, like in Master Rank, where he just breathes fire at the ground, and if you're anywhere near there, you don't get staggered or knocked back or anything. You just drains your health very quickly. And his Nova attack is really cool looking, but he pulls out a little bit too quickly, I think, for some weapons, for it to be reasonable for them to dodge or block. I would say this fight, despite it being, you know, an Elder Dragon, which generally people will rate higher, I actually think this is like a C tier fight. Maybe B tier, but I'm a little bit more flexible on where the placement goes, but I don't think it's like an A tier fight. Like I think a lot of people would place it there.
I'd put him at C tier.
Yeah, I think I would too. I'd put him at the top. He's kind of interesting.
He's cool looking. He's not very fun to fight.
Yeah. Like, his Nova, once you know how to deal with it, isn't even that bad. He's just, like, kind of
Yeah, his Nova's time. Where he breathes at the ground and just fire Novas the ground is, I think, more dangerous than his Nova, but...
Yeah.
His Nova isn't fun.
Oh, Kushala Daora, baby, alright.
Wow. Okay, speaking of Elder Dragon, I don't know why you say Elder Dragons should be rated higher, but this one's worse.
I think so too.
He just fought instead of Rathian and Rathalos, which are kind of irritating because they float off the ground a little bit sometime, and the other monsters that fly, this guy's just 1,000 fucking feet in the air at all times.
Yeah.
And just makes a million tornadoes to just push you around so you can't play.
Yeah. Also,
he's just no fun.
He's like one of maybe 2 monsters in the entire game where the wind pressure does anything. Which I'd rather that just not be in the game at all, but you know.
So personally, I think this monster is actually one of my favorites. I'm a little bit biased for sure. I know this is gonna be an unpopular opinion. I think a lot of people actually share your opinion.
User spotted.
Annoying. Yeah, but I do think that its design at the very least is really intimidating. The wind, I can see that'd be annoying for a lot of players, but I don't think it spends as much time. That's when it. I don't think it spends as much time using its tornado and wind as you remember. You just remember those parts because that's the part where it has to slow down a lot of the melee characters.
That's the part where it's on the ground. So when it's on the ground, you can't fight it. But when it's in the air, it just sits up there and does nothing.
Most of the time when it's in the air is when it's using the tornadoes. No, when it's in the air, it uses the tornadoes. That's the primary. When it's flying is when it uses a lot of the tornadoes. It does land afterwards, and the tornadoes persist, but it's supposed to use the tornadoes while it's in the air. It's kind of a phase. It's a little bit more. This is the attacking phase. This is the phase where you dodge tornadoes, which that's a little bit more rigid. I can see why people don't like that as much. Personally, as bow user, of course, I don't mind that phase as much because I could just get to shoot it. But I think its design is cool. I think its grounded moveset is really fun to fight. It's got a lot of fun swipes and attacks that feel very dynamic to fight as it like moves around. I would personally put this monster in like A tier above Odogaron, but I recognize that is not going to be a reasonable place to put it. So I would settle for like above Tiestra. I don't think it's worse than Tiestra. I think that putting it worse than Tiestra is just incorrect.
I like it less than Tiestra though.
He's way worse than Tiestra.
I think
that the caveat is we all kind of think Tiestra is C tier, whereas I think that there's a lot of redeeming qualities that Kushala Daora brings.
I don't think Kushala's D tier, but I don't know. I would put
His
him in
redeeming
C.
quality is that only bow players can fight him.
I've had fun fighting him with Encyclave and Longsword as well. I actually think I just like this fight.
No, eventually I learned this fight with Gunlance, and it's actually doable. It's more doable than like Oda surprisingly.
Yeah, but the thing is he's very doable because he's easy.
He's not that hard.
He doesn't do anything at all.
But when
So
down...
I can beat him easily with all the weapons I play. But he's just not fun.
I think his grounded moveset is interesting, and it is fun. And I think the tornadoes provide an interesting challenge. Where you have to, like, position in certain ways. And I think that the presence of this monster, the spectacle, is very high for me. I think that the way it, like, merges from the tornadoes is always very cool looking. I can recognize that it's not everyone's favorite, but I do think it's a disservice if you put it below Tiestra.
I'll be kind to your opinion and put it there, but I'm not a big Kushala fan.
That's the most I can ask of you.
Normal Valhazak.
Oh, now we at the best Elder Dragon.
And
my
me and Ethan
boy.
have swapped roles. This monster sucks. Getting your health cut in half is not a fun mechanic. Its design is cool. Its spectacle is pretty cool. But you get your health halved in a zone that already constantly drains your health.
But he's
passive
so cool,
health drain
though.
is not that interesting. His moveset is alright. If you can dodge the laser beam, you basically can beat him, and if you can't, then you won't.
The laser beam is so annoying.
He uses that move a lot, but...
Yeah, but did you think about how cool he was?
He is an interesting design, certainly. I think he's a very interesting design. I think, like the other... dragons, what are they called again? The
Elder Dragons?
Elder Dragons. Like the other Elder Dragons, he's a little bit too high fantasy for me to really, like, get in the, like, mood for them. Especially because it's such a departure at this point in the game from the established... I mean, you get more away from it as you get into...
A little bit too high
Rank,
fantasy for me to not love him.
He's cool.
Fair. You can argue... Where would you put him, Ethan?
Top of A. Maybe
I would put him
bottom of S.
I would put him below Azurathlos, personally.
I would put him exactly where he is right now.
So we could compromise and put him in A tier.
I think a compromise would
be like tier.
Yeah.
He's so much fun to fight with friend build, though.
You know, that's fair.
Yeah.
You do get to AoE eat null berries.
90% of people don't play with that build. Because a lot of people play on their own, and the people who play co-op, most of them aren't building support build.
Normal Xeno'jiva. I don't know if either of you guys like this fight.
I do.
Okay.
Bull build spotted.
Yeah, well, I just want to hear why you
And
like
it's like
it, because I would put it here otherwise.
I think that it's surprisingly works for a monster of that size. The spectacle is cool. It's really a beautiful monster to look at. It's like this weird ghost Leviathan from like Subnautica. But
it does look cool, yeah.
Really cool laser beam. Lorically, it's really important. It's the Azure Star that they always bring up and talk about in the lore. That they always like. They're like, oh, you're the Azure Star.
Yeah, which turns out to be its egg or whatever, right?
Yeah. It's
that's what I'm getting up in the morning for is Monster Hunter lore.
Fair. But I also just think that the spectacle of the fight when you're fighting it is really cool. I think the moves are actually kind of fun to dodge. The laser beams, its moves are weird at first. It's like, oh, why is it shooting like 2 blasts in this sideways direction, then turning 180 and shooting another blast? Once you get the hang of it, this is a fun monster to kind of just jump around and attack. I don't know. I think that people don't like it because it's a little bit of a departure, but I think it's a departure in a good direction, unlike...
I think there is another version of this later, and it's not probably who you're thinking of, who is what you're talking about, but I think just does it 100 times better.
I think I am of the same mind as you. We'll find out later, I guess. But I
This
agree.
monster in
This
like
monster's a departure. Maybe he's cool looking. Maybe
is
he
cool
has
looking.
cool attacks. Maybe he's fun to.
Yep.
Maybe he's fun to dodge. If only that mattered, because if you aren't playing Insect Glaive or Bow, you are glued to his toenail that is armored, and you can't hit it. And that's the only part of the monster you can hit, and you can't hit it. And he doesn't do anything but waddle around in circles, and maybe he does other attacks, but I didn't see it glued to his toenail
Doing
in
this,
the 4.5-hour fight of
Yep.
hitting a log.
that's the worst part, is doing this in normal mode with unoptimized gear with like, I don't know, let's just say like a sword and shield or a lance, right? This fight takes like an hour to do. He has so much health.
it's a
He's
big
so
flashy final boss. I think
annoying.
it's fair that it takes a while to do the fight.
Yeah,
But
you
it's a
know, if you-
drag. It's cool for the first like 20 minutes, and then it's just like, stop.
I think it was cool for like the 1 second that he came out of his egg, and then I was done.
Well, I
You
don't think
he may be cool and flashy, but you don't get to see any of it if you
Well,
aren't Insect Glaive or
where-
Bow. You don't
well,
see
any
the
of
monster.
guns
Where would
likely see it
you
as
you
well.
put him, Matt? Where would you put him?
I would put him in probably looking at this tier list, I'd probably put him in either bottom of A tier or top of B tier. I think that as a compromise, I think at least pulling him out of D tier is reasonable, because I don't think this is a D tier monster, especially if you compare him to Kirin and Kuluyaku. There's no way that this monster, just the presence of it alone, I don't think there's any way this monster belongs with those ones.
This monster, at the end of you fight this in the end of normal mode or the end of
High rank.
high rank.
It's
This
high rank.
monster
Nope.
almost made me stop playing the game.
Yeah, I don't.
I
even-
fought him once, and I didn't.
I think that's relatively justified.
I'd put him in a generously below Zora Magdaros.
Generously. Okay.
Just barely eking
I'm
out
gonna-
over Black Diablo.
I'm gonna try to be fair, and I'll put him here. I guess. Maybe here, only because Radobon's really boring, but like...
If you had fought this monster earlier, and he was weaker, I would have dropped this game when I fought him.
Alright. Anyway, Lunastra. Gonna start putting people in C because B has a full line now, but
Passive health burn does not make this monster more interesting, it makes it worse. The
Yeah.
big Nova attack is 3 times the size, and it's just a heal check, or did you happen to be at the edge of the arena when he used it?
Yep.
This monster is dreadful, and I think it's easily like low D tier. It's cool.
Wow, you were
conceptually-
surprisingly nice to that monster.
I actually think in Master Rank, I enjoy fighting Lunastra more than Teostra, just because I fought them both enough to where I learned its moveset, and I just think it's a little bit more interesting. But I will concede, at the end of High Rank, when this monster first appears, it is the most dumb, like, bullshit, unfun, stupid mechanic, like... I don't understand how, like, that was put in the game level of why is this here.
I didn't fight this monster until Master Rank.
Fighting
And
him in the arena
Can't-
in High Rank is horrible.
Ugh.
Because the whole arena
Awful.
is dot. It's so
you
bad.
can't fight him with dual blades or sword and shield because you have to stand under him, and if you stand, or her, I guess, because technically,
Yeah, it's just a female,
if you
yeah,
stand
so-
under her, you are on fire and dying. And you can't fight it with gun because its fire blocks projectiles for some reason, so it just sets the whole arena on fire, and you can't shoot.
You
Yeah.
have to hit its head, but yeah, it is.
No, you have to hit Teostra's head. Teostra has the thing where if you can only shoot it in its head, or it doesn't take projectile damage.
Yeah, you can
Lunastra
technically shoot
puts
Lunastra,
down
but yeah.
fire and you can't
right,
shoot
yeah.
through it.
Yeah, they put
Right.
fire
So
down
you
on the
just
field and it blocks
Don't get to
projectiles.
play
Yeah,
unless
I
the arena's not on fire, and
I
it's
fought the same
always
with
on
Bo,
fire.
and it's not as bad because Bo can reposition easier. But yeah, it is annoying to have to shoot around that. I'm not a huge fan of this monster. I don't think it should be in C tier. Where you? Oh no, you just putting it in now. Yeah, I think this is like a D tier monster. I don't think it's as bad as like the F tier monsters because
He's not as bad as Kirin, at least.
I don't
yeah.
think he's F tier. I'd put him there. Yeah,
I'd put him
fine.
there. I think that's reasonable.
Behemoth.
Wow, this is my favorite. I've never fought this monster.
Yeah, I'm the only person who's fought this monster. And okay, weirdly enough, I think there's a big divide like online with this monster. For a ton of people are like, yo, this is like my favorite fight in the game. I really like the mechanics. It's so cool. And I love Final Fantasy XIV, okay? So this is not coming from a place of hating like MMOs or like the MMO party setup thing. I just think this fight is terrible. I think it does not work very well in Monster Hunter. It doesn't feel like you're doing a fun Monster Hunter fight. It feels like you're playing a bad fight from another game. And I can't I can't in good consciousness put him anywhere above D. Probably like where he is now, to be honest.
You know, it's weird. It's almost like Monster Hunter is worse when it tries to not be Monster Hunter.
Yeah.
Like with Kirin, or with Behemoth, or with our next monster.
Bro. What?
Possibly
Bro, they
the
pulled
worst-
up with a lesson. You get to be Geralt. It's so cool. It has all the stuff. The game totally changes, and then the monster shows up, and you're
Yeah, you like do this thing where you're like tracking its scent as Geralt, and you're like, oh, let me talk to NPCs and figure it out. It's a really cool event, and I love The Witcher 3, so I liked it. The fight is so bad, though. It's so bad. Oh.
This is a goblin ghoul mode monster. If you fight this and like this, you are a goblin or a ghoul exclusively.
Yeah, I don't know if there's much to be said.
that's offensive.
He's just ass.
As a goblin enjoyer.
Literally, he has like the mechanic that like this guy, or I guess Valhazak, has, where he takes over monsters in the area and they fight you, except for some reason they're twice as tanky when he has them and they do more damage. Also he stun locks you, and if you're not playing in a party, good luck.
Valhazak doesn't really do it.
I mean, he takes over.
I mean, he does. He takes them over, and then they die 1 second
Yeah, they
later,
suck.
and then they don't come back.
Yeah. But it is a mechanic. It's just Leshen does it, and it's
summons
terrible.
100 of them, and then resummons them constantly.
Yeah, and he
and
doesn't
then
even
only
have
runs away
to take them. He doesn't even have to like take them from an area. He just spawns them out of bushes magically whenever he wants to.
So just leave them there and move on.
Anyway,
and then put this fish next.
So this
to
is all the normal and high rank monsters. I'm gonna take a pause right here. And we'll continue with master rank, Iceborne stuff.
I'll see you in the next video.
See ya.